Because it's Easter weekend, we thought we'd bring you an Easter egg hunt. And that's right. Easter egg is a term that's been used to describe a message, image, or feature hidden in a video game or film, usually an electronic medium. The term was used in this manner, was coined around 1979 by Steve Wright, the then director of software development, the Atari Consumer Division, to describe a hidden message in the Atari video game adventure in a reference to an Easter egg hunt. But video games aren't the only ones getting Easter eggs based on festivities. Almost every form of media has jumped on the bandwagon, hiding a little nod or even clues to upcoming projects in their products. So tonight we're talking about some of our favorite Easter eggs of all time. And I will be kicking this off with one that took almost 20 years to find. Number 10 in our countdown is the Spectrum Emulator, a emulator that was actually found in GoldenEye. GoldenEye 007 was released on August 1997, and nearly 2 years after the film. The Crane cartridge size is about 96 megabytes, which is like 12 megabytes or something like that now. I don't know. Additionally, every cartridge in the game contains a fully functional ZX Spectrum emulator with 10 Rare developed games. This function was originally made as an experimental side project by Rare staff and was deactivated in the final build of the game, but has since been unlocked through fan-developed patches. And in addition to the Nintendo 64 game, a racing game was developed for the Virtual Boy, but was ultimately canceled before it was released. So yeah, there was basically a game emulator with several different games inside of GoldenEye. So a game inside of a game that took about 15 years after the game's released for them to find. Gameception. What do you guys think about Spectrum Emulator and GoldenEye? Can you believe there was a game inside of the game?
I have a cartridge of GoldenEye in my game room right now. And when I first saw this, I was like, damn, I need to figure out how to do it. Because that would be fun to like just go in and try to fuck around with the emulator. Now that I know about it. When we were putting this list together, actually, that was one of the things that I told you is that this was one I had never heard of, which makes sense because it took almost 20 years for people to find. So
yeah, it was a very well hidden one. It was probably more well hidden than the next one in our countdown. Yeah. But the next one in our countdown is a fun one that a lot of people kind of jumped onto, which is number 9. Number 9 in the countdown, Kev?
Yeah, E.T. and Star Wars collide. Released only a few years after Star Wars by George Lucas's good friend Steven Spielberg, E.T. is full of references to a galaxy far, far away. The most obvious is the Yoda Halloween costume, which is also accompanied by a rendition of John Williams' Yoda theme. And like most boys in the 80s, Elliot's bedroom is full of Star Wars toys. Not to be outdone, George Lucas returned the favor several years later by inserting several of E.T.'s species during the Senate meeting halfway through The Phantom Menace. Take a closer look after Queen Amidala proposes a vote of no confidence. A cute cheering lightens up a political heavy scene.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
This is how the world ends.
I have a claim to make.
Okay. All right.
Very, very important, controversial claim.
All right.
E.T. is a Jedi. Prove me wrong.
Oh.
He can float things with his mind. He has healing powers. E.T. is a Jedi.
No, like it honestly, with both of these,
it makes sense.
With the ETs being in Star Wars, it kind of like honestly makes that the most logical explanation in a way. And we've never seen Earth in Star Wars.
Well, because it's in a galaxy far, far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ET was very far from home.
Right. Yes, he was. He was. Maybe
so. By the distance of far, we know that these things could totally be related.
And we also know when Jedis use too much of their healing powers, it can sometimes cause them to be sick. Like obviously, they're dying.
It would be draining the midichlorian from their system, which midichlorian is made out of the life force of all living creatures. If it's draining its own midichlorian count, then of course it would get sick.
Yeah. But I love that scene. And I remember the first time I was in theaters as a kid and I spotted E.T. just sitting there cheering as, democracy died or whatever. and I'm just like, it felt like the scene that you see, the big meme from fucking Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when Leo's got the cigarette hanging from his mouth and he's pointing at the TV like, oh, that's him.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this one was a bit more obvious, but it was definitely a really cool nod between two friendly directors. Now, the next one is really just a direct reference to the actor themselves.
Yeah.
And that is a number 8 in the countdown. Jake, what do we have for number 8?
Yeah, number 8 on this week's countdown of Easter eggs is Pulp Fiction's quote on Nick Fury's tombstone in Winter Soldier. The MCU loves to mess with its audience by supposedly killing big characters only to bring them back later on or even in the same movie. Captain America: The Winter Soldier was no expectation, as it had Nick Fury faking his death during a big part of the movie, to the point where his tombstone was shown on the screen, and that's where we get this Tarantino reference. Fury's empath. How do you say that word? Basically the
Epitaph?
I put it in here. Epitaph. There you go. Whatever. Anyway.
Epitaph.
I bet you didn't think I knew what a googly was, did you, Dotson? But basically, his tombstone reads, "The path of the righteous man," Ezekiel 25:17. Which, if you're a fan of Pulp Fiction, you will know that is how Jules. That's one of Jules's most famous lines in the Pulp Fiction film. And so it was a really cool kind of nod for Samuel's character and everything. And it also proves that Nick Fury was essentially a mobster or gangster that worked for, Marcellus way before he ever became the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. So he's got a spotted past.
The path of the righteous man. I mean, we could tell he had a checkered past. I mean, he's not got an eye patch for nothing, right? It's not like a cat scratched him there or something. But this was a really cool nod. I think it was something that not very many people caught right after the movie, but it was one of those things that, you found out on a BuzzFeed article after you watched the movie, top 10 things you might have missed about.
It's hilarious because it fits in so well with a normal tombstone, with a nice Bible verse kind of a thing. Like everybody, you would see that and go, "Oh, Nick Fury, rest in peace," But if you know the reference, it's actually a pretty hilarious nod.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. Well, while that one was a very kind of nod quote to the actor in a very, very meta way, one thing that was kind of not as meta, but kind of almost like an expected Easter egg, the golden Easter egg for any fan of this franchise, if you will, is number 7 in the countdown, which is Batman Arkham's next game Easter egg. And what we mean by the next game Easter egg is every Batman Arkham game basically has an Easter egg that reveals the plot of the next game. The Batman Arkham series is known for a bunch of Easter eggs and cameos across Batman lore, right? But the most famous Easter eggs are the ones that they use to tease the next game that they're working on or where the series is going after this. And it's a tradition that they've kept constant throughout the franchise. In Arkham Asylum, you can find a secret room in Hugo Strange's hideout that details plans for Arkham City. So even when this game was first released, you can go through and you can find the plans for Arkham City in Arkham Asylum. In Arkham City, if you travel to the Falcone shipping yard, there'll be a particular ship that if you pull out your code finder, all of a sudden there'll be a spot where you can do your little code reader. And once you open the hatch, it leads down into a chamber where there's a bunch of fear toxin tanks and a note from note from the Falcone family basically saying they delivered a whole bunch of fear toxin to Scarecrow, who's been off island or whatever. We saw Scarecrow in Arkham Asylum, but this is actually the nod for Arkham Knight. Because Arkham Knight, he's the main villain where he takes over the entire town with these shipments of fear toxins. That's why we don't see him in Arkham City at all. And he comes back in Arkham Knight.
Wow, I remember finding that Scarecrow one and being like, "Oh, wow, what is this?"
Yeah. Even Arkham Origins ends with an Easter egg teasing the Suicide Squad, which wouldn't have come out until earlier which wouldn't have been revealed until earlier last year when they revealed at DC Fandom that Rocksteady was in fact working on a Suicide Squad shooter game. So they've been really consistent with these Easter eggs. It's kind of the big one to find in the Batman Arkham games. The Arkham franchise has always been known for really good Easter eggs, and even the creator of Arkham City says all the Easter eggs haven't been found in Arkham City yet.
Wow.
But with that said, this one's hands down like the kind of the coolest ones. I remember finding that shipping yard with the Falcone the Scarecrow thing as well. And it was funny because the one that came out after that was technically Arkham Origins, but Arkham Origins was a kind of a sideline, like sprung up out of the nowhere project that Warner Brothers Montreal did because they knew that Arkham Knight was going to take a long time to work on. And so they didn't really necessarily plan for that one. So that one's kind of out of nowhere, but even then it still includes
combat's still fun.
The combat's still fun. I still liked it. I thought that the multiplayer was great, but I could go on about the Batman Arkham series for a while. But what do you guys think about Batman Arkham's next game Easter egg, making it as number 7 in the countdown?
I think you could have just put Batman Arkham series up here in general. Like, there's nothing but Easter eggs.
Tons of Easter eggs.
Even for like that was one of the reasons why you loved it, because you're like just basically traveling around Arkham City trying to, figure out. Well, some of these Easter eggs are actual missions, and it's just more into the lore of Batman. And you're like a lot of collectibles that you're interested in because it teaches you more so about, I guess, the history of the comic books and everything. So yeah, Origins was trash. I agree with that. You know what? Yeah, Origins was trash.
I gotta replay it. I have to replay them because I'm such a Batman fanboy. I don't have beef with Origins. For some reason, but yet the internet tells me I should. So I guess I need to go
the
back
same way, Jake. I feel the exact same way.
It was bad because they promoted it as your antagonist was Deathstroke,
and it ended up being fight him. Yeah, that was.
You fight him in the first mission, and then that's it. He's in jail for the rest of the game.
I mean, I was okay with going after the rest of the assassins, but yeah, I can see your point as like setting up Deathstroke as the main villain. You're right. They
if I'm comparing it to Arkham City, yeah, no, definitely not as good of a game. Arkham City's fun. Yeah. Like, dude,
for sure.
That game, for primo.
Right.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
While the Arkham series is full of Easter eggs, they're a bit easier to spot than probably number 6 on the countdown, which is probably why number 6 makes it so high on the countdown. Kev, what do we have for number 6 on the countdown?
Yeah, we've got basically every Pixar movie. Some of Pixar's notorious Easter eggs are references to Pixar films that were still in production at the time of release, making them references to upcoming Pixar films. Although it hasn't been as consistent as some of their other Easter eggs in recent years, it has become a tradition for Pixar to put in each of their films a cameo or an allusion to a character from their following film. For example, in the most recent Pixar films like Toy Story 4, the Pegasus on the side of Barley Lightfoot's van is seen on the bouncy castle at the carnival, an allusion to Onward. In Onward, when Colt Bronco knocks over Barley Lightfoot's Dungeons and Dragons inspired board game, in the left side of a bookshelf, you can see a music album of Dorothy Williams, a human jazz performer in the upcoming Pixar film Soul. Even Soul has a reference to upcoming Pixar film Lucas, so it's easy to say this is a trend that's here to stay. Yeah.
Also, this goes down all. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I was gonna say I like knowing that the room where what's his name? Not Andy, but the other piece of shit kid that Sid. Yeah, that Monsters Inc. that they went into.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good one. That's why we had to put Pixar as a whole, because literally, and we only gave a few examples right there of the most recent ones, but this goes all the way back
Bon Voyage is in Ratatouille and all this stuff.
Even it's been for a hot minute. Pixar, there's even nods to other Pixar films and like Finding Nemo from back in the day, which is crazy to think that that's like a classic Pixar film now. But anyway, we're getting old.
Yeah, we are.
But it's just they've just done it for so long that it's so interesting to see how it's going to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, Pixar has been the king of Easter eggs for a long time, and even this recent one, Lucas, as you said earlier, they someone. Basically, they looked for the Easter egg in there because they know what the next film was, and this was before the Lucas trailer even came out. Yeah, and I remember there was a TikTok. It was like, "Pixar, is this you?" And it was just a poster of the place where Lucas is supposed to be set at as he's walking down the street. Which is a very particular city in France or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways. But while there are multiple Pixar references out there, they weren't nearly as legendary or rewarding to find as number 5 on the countdown. And as the king of Halo himself, tell us who number 5 is on the countdown, Jake.
Yeah, number 5 on this week's countdown. We're literally going to crank the difficulty up to legendary for it. It's Halo's Skulls. And Fattest Sax, who's in the chat right now, will definitely know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. Every Halo since Halo 2 has included collectibles named Skulls in each of the game's campaign levels. Skulls act as toggleable challenges that make Halo's campaign either harder or stranger. Notable skulls include the dialogue changing "I would have been your daddy" or the IWHBYD skull, and the masochistic. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And the masochistic iron that makes every player restart from the last checkpoint if any player dies. So basically, a lot of these skulls were essentially, and there was the party skull, which would essentially, anytime you hit a grunt with a headshot, it'd go yay, and confetti would pop out everywhere. And so these skulls altered the game, obviously, and would take you out of the kind of like immersion. So it was something that a lot of players did after they had beat the campaign completely. You would collect these skulls as you were collecting them. Then the big thing to do was to go back and replay the game with some of them active, right? And the ones like the Masochist Iron, like, oh my God, dude. It basically would make it like where anytime you guys were playing throughout the campaign, if either player died, you just automatically start all the way back at the beginning. And so it would make essentially the game next to impossible to play if you were playing with somebody who wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And so every Halo fan remembers trying to find these skulls and what fresh hell they unlocked. And that's why they make number 5 on this week's countdown. Yeah,
they were a nice little Easter egg, and they were something that the people very much wanted. And so sometimes the sought afterness of the Easter egg makes it all the better, right?
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
But it's hard to top actual fucking Easter eggs, right? Of all the things. Right? Of all the things out there, actual fucking Easter eggs would be pretty crazy, right? And in a surprisingly meta twist, number 4 on our countdown, actual Easter eggs in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Actual chocolate eggs can be found throughout the Rocky Horror Picture Show, as the cast and crew had an Easter egg hunt on set and couldn't find them all. This was basically, well before this was still in the time where the idea of Easter egg was just becoming prominent, right? And for once, Easter eggs is literal. It literally makes sense. They had an Easter egg hunt on the show, and they couldn't find them all. And there's some that actually appear on the actual show. This sparks an interesting debate, as some believe the original Easter eggs are from Rocky Horror, which the term actually comes from the 1979 Atari adventure game, as we talked about in the intro. While the adventure is 100% the first reference to Easter eggs in a video game, some may say Rocky Horror is the OG of Easter eggs in general, but that's because it's literally Easter eggs that they're talking about there. So
Rocky Horror came out in 75, and having these Easter eggs kind of like peppered out became a quick fan favorite thing to do. Find them. And so it's just funny that that's kind of like people like kind of associate it as the first usage of it. But most video game people think that the 79 Atari adventure game or game adventure is the actual like beginning of
this is one of the
Easter
first
eggs.
Sorry, I spoke this wrong. This is one of the first references to Easter eggs in a movie, but the video game idea of Easter eggs came well before the idea of Rocky Horror. So I have to agree with you, Jake.
And so it sparks an interesting debate because of the timeline, right? Like people think that, Easter eggs came from Rocky Horror, but a lot of people believe that it's adventure actually, because Rocky Horror was an accidental thing. Yeah. They didn't really mean to leave the eggs on set. That was something that people noticed afterwards. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Atari's adventure, that was purposely put in there to be found later, which is what kind of, which is what an Easter egg really is.
Yeah, right. There's the intention behind it, right? That's what an Easter egg really is, at least for what it's evolved to nowadays. It's definitely something that's intentional by the people that create the art. Number 3, though, in the countdown, of course, is even more important than Rocky Horror. It's Assassin's Creed, particularly the Turkey Assassin. Tell us why the Turkey Assassin makes number 3 on the countdown, Kev.
Guys, Assassin's Creed 3, the Turkey Assassin. Connor might be one of the more stoic assassins in franchise history, but that doesn't mean he can't have all the fun like this Easter egg you'll find at the Davenport homestead. If you hide on a certain corner of the house and whistle, A heretofore unseen turkey will appear. That might seem lame on the surface, but you enter the classic Contra mode. Connor will then feed the turkey, and a hood will appear on its head, making the turkey an official assassin. Apparently, they'll let anybody in these days. Guys, are you upset that we haven't been initiated yet?
I think this one's a super fun one because, like, the fact that I didn't know it existed. I played Assassin's Creed 3. I liked it was okay, right? I did think Connor was okay. It was one of the first times we got to use an axe in Assassin's Creed, which I was all about. Yeah. And so, but I did not know about this turkey thing until I was making this list. And the fact that they let you do the Contra code, the classic, Contra code from back in the day, like to make this turkey into an assassin, like fucking hilarious, dude.
Yeah, it's like an Easter egg within an Easter egg. The Contra code is like a classic nod to Easter eggs in general, and cheat codes in general, and like it's a great mesh of video game lore all in one little Easter egg. It's nice.
Exactly.
Appreciate it. It's good.
It's fun. Good wholesome Easter egg.
Chef's kiss. Good wholesome Easter egg. But that can't top number 2 in the countdown, which is the Doom creator in Doom. Tell us why the Doom creator in Doom makes number 2 in the countdown, Jake.
Yeah, a little less wholesome of a game. Would any Easter egg list be complete without the mention of Doom 2 creator John Romero's brutal reimagining of himself? In order to defeat a monster terrifyingly called the Icon of Sin, with a rocket launcher in the final boss level, players need to shoot it in the face repeatedly. Nothing unusual here, right? Except for when the no-clip cheat code, it becomes apparent that the target just so happens to be John Romero's his own head impaled on a spike. Is everything okay at home, John? The iconic scene saw John becoming the face of Doom 2 in more ways than one. So essentially, basically, as you're pumping this fucking monster called the Icon of Sin with rockets to the face, if you use a cheat code that allows no clipping to happen on the screen, it becomes clear that you're actually shooting a digital version of the creator who made that game's face on a spike. And so it's a pretty interesting kind of Easter egg that actually involves a little bit of a cheat code, but to be able to shoot the creator of Doom in the face for one of the final boss battles is pretty epic.
That is pretty epic, and it's a way to kind of bring the Easter eggs full circle. Doom has always been known for good Easter eggs as well.
Doom Eternal cranked them up to level 10, and they pretty much did like a skull, kind of Halo skull level thing where you find like actual Doom trophies,
Yeah.
And it changes
Doom Boys
the
or something
game
like
and
that.
stuff like that.
Doom bots, yeah.
And so Doom's always, that's why it made it so high on the countdown too, because Doom is one of those games when it comes to Easter eggs and stuff. It's just so well known.
100%. But it's hard to top number 1 on the countdown. Number 1 on the countdown is something that we all grew up with, right? It's unfortunately something that generations after us won't ever be able to get to experience. We got to live in the silver age of the greatest Easter eggs of all time, which is number 1 in the countdown, which is the Stan Lee cameos. Arguably the most important comics writer of the 20th century, Stan Lee had a hand in creating many of the Marvel Universe's biggest stars. He appeared in every MCU movie so far. He's appeared in every MCU movie so far, and some fans have even found Stan Lee pictures, comics, and even more in MC shows like WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier. Dubbed the King of Cameos, it's easy to see why Stan Lee makes the top of this countdown. He's a god among the comic book world, and it's nice to know he'll live on forever in the infamous Marvel cameos that he appeared in. Now, it's one thing that is really interesting here that there's a little bit of debate is, are cameos Easter eggs? And I believe that they are, right? We talked about the definition of an Easter egg is to basically something that hides a hidden meaning, right? And cameos is particularly Stan Lee's cameos. We're hiding a hidden meaning. He was meant to play a bus driver, but you knew that bus driver was actually Stan Lee. And it was breaking that fourth wall for a second to go, oh, here's a nod, here's a homage to the creator of all of these things that breaks the image of the story that we're actually telling. He's not really the guy that drank that one glass of soda that had Hulk's blood in it and make him pass out. He's not actually Hugh Hefner passing by Tony Stark at the Emmys. You know, he's actually Stan Lee, and every single time he was there, no matter what he was doing, he was making that.
The fuck?
I know. Luke is your son, but you can still be my daddy. Oh, God.
All right, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not quite sure what to do here. This is